Welcome back to another episode of Career Hunter. I am your host, Jacob Johnston. This week we have a great episode for you. This one means a little bit more to me than any other interview because this is with Kathy Whelan. She is the Director of Business Career Services at Iowa State University. And that is, the university that I graduated from, so this touches a little more closer to home. Throughout this interview, what we are going to be doing is talking about what you can do while you're still in school to prepare yourself for your first job after graduation. We're going to talk about what to do if you are unemployed currently and underemployed, and how to get some non-traditional experience. We'll continue learning about all the various views on how to use social media and some of the plugins or other services that you can use that interacts with social media to help you with your job search. And so I'm not going to take up much of your time here up front. We're just going to go ahead, dive into the interview so that you can get the information that you are looking for. And don't forget to subscribe if you find this information useful. So, without further ado, here we go. Okay, and welcome to the show, my guest at this time, Kathy Whelan. She is the Business Career Service Director at Iowa State University. And how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, Jacob.
Yes, and so before we start diving in too much here, how about you give the audience an overview about you and what you do?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Business Career Services serves the current students of the College of Business as well as graduates, alumni. We work very heavily with employers, both in and out of the state of Iowa as well as around the world. So we have as a primary function to connect students and graduates with companies. My role here is one where I probably work about half with students and about half with companies, which makes it a lot of fun. I'm currently working with a caseload of management information systems as well as supply chain, although I've worked with every single major in the business college at one point or another. So we just have the opportunity to have more staff these days, so the majors are kind of segmented out for each person, so that works very well. But we deliver all of the recruiting, the career fairs, the events related to job seeking for the college, as well as teaching a class in professionalism and careers in business in the business college, and that's kind of a quick once over.
Okay, so you're definitely busy. Makes one wonder if you ever have a home life.
Well, the good thing about this work is that it's very interesting, and the students and graduates are great to work with, as are the companies and organizations. So it's a lot of fun, and we enjoy it. And we do have cycles and some downtime here and there, and that's kind of one of the nice things about university life. But
Okay, and working primarily with students in your role, what would you say would be the number one thing that students can do while they're still, attending classes in college to demonstrate that they have the skills and abilities in addition to the knowledge needed in order to land a well-paid position, which I would define better than minimum wage, or higher up, entry level, 30,000 plus a year
Sure.
job.
So I think one of the challenges for students currently is that companies are really looking for what they consider to be the package deal. So not only do you have to have the academic knowledge, but then you need these other pieces in conjunction with the academic background. So they are expecting candidates to come to them with experience. which can be tough if we haven't had any experience before. They're expecting them to come to them with technical skills. They are also looking for volunteerism or service types of demonstrated skills, as well as then demonstrated leadership. And that really is probably the biggest factor, I think, for students in terms of how they can get started early in gaining experience while they're at Iowa State, is through both service and leadership through organizations.
Okay, and just to follow up on that, you know, when you're going through and talking about it, I know from my experience at Iowa State, there's a lot of student groups and organizations. If one is not able to get into a internship, or you know, the only job that they can find in or around the university is more of the low skilled position to pay for college, what activities can they do in the student groups to gain the experience that employers will look at and deem valid as demonstrated ability?
So I think that you probably remember, Jacob, that some of the organizations that you were in, you had to spend a good amount of time in those to really work your way up and to gain those really significant student leadership positions, which you were able to do. However, that can be hard for students as well. So something that I recommend to current students is to target some of those small and medium-sized organizations where the ladder might not be so long. And it really doesn't matter that much what it is, but something that interests you, that you can talk about in an interview situation, and where you can go and take actual action to affect change in that organization. So again, the type of role or the type of position isn't as important as, can I say that I did something to contribute to their betterment.
Okay, and yes, I remember at Iowa State, you know, being part of the student government. That was very time consuming, although it did provide a lot of opportunities to take on leadership skills and develop a lot of technical skills as well. And so I know Iowa State has a load of opportunities for students. And what would you say, you know, is some of the best practices or the best ways for students to go out, find an open position, and connect with the decision makers that have the abilities to
Well,
hire them?
so much of that happens best in kind of an organic way, right? So places that you can be where, for example, supply chain people hang out, or through professional associations, through charitable organizations, through places where you can do work and connect with others, and again, what I'd call kind of an organic way, which is how you grow relationships. I really think those are absolutely ideal. Now, sometimes you're not going to meet people in the organizations that you need to meet in those places. So how do you handle that? I would say that career services is a really good tool. If you have a company that you're interested in and you don't have a contact there, reach out to us. We will be happy to check in with our contacts, see if we can release some contact information, or if they can suggest a person in their company. We love serving as a resource in that way. Now, I do see students, and I've had several pretty big success stories this fall specifically. I do see students leveraging LinkedIn very, very well. And I do think that that can be a really nice tool for meeting people in organizations when you don't know of anyone in that particular firm. So that's something else that we're using very heavily.
Okay, and to follow up on that, on building relationships organically and making those contacts, you know, LinkedIn, you know, love it. I believe it is a great resource, as well as, you know, the career service at Iowa State. Uh, However, let's say, you know, we get out and, you know, if they've moved away or, you know, or whatever, how would they find events in which these professionals gather together, or what resources would they use to figure out
Yeah,
where to
I
go to meet
probably am
them?
going to go back to the associations on that. So, for example, if we're talking about marketing, there's an AMA chapter in about every mid to large size market, and oftentimes they have events, and they can be fundraisers, or they can be, speed networking or something like that. But I do like those associations very much. For a lot of fresh graduates, I'm personally not eligible anymore, but the young professionals groups are really an outstanding way to meet some people in a community where you may not really know a lot of people. And that is, something that you can use regardless of your discipline or your field or your profession. Now, when we start to work with supply chainers and MIS people, we talk about things such as APICS and ISM and all these, little niche professional groups, but you have to kind of figure out where the people who, if it's digital media or whatever it is, what groups are they in, and then try to find that chapter in whatever location you might be.
Okay, and one group here in Iowa is the Iowa Young Professional Network. I would assume that you would highly recommend them as, at least a starting point to find out all
Absolutely.
the other
Yep. Great
professional
resource.
networks out there. Okay, and now we're going to have a little bit of fun. I'm sure you hear all types of stories, on this. So I want to know what have been some of the most creative ways people have gone out, reached out to someone, demonstrated their qualifications, and got a job. Some examples that I've heard going around is some people taking out a Facebook dark post ad and showing up in the newsfeed of the hiring manager, which kind of concerns me now that LinkedIn is starting to do sponsored posts and ads, and so I figure some people might start taking ads on there targeting hiring managers. But I want to hear from you and your experience on what you've seen as some of the creative outside the box way of finding
Well,
and
we
landing a
have
job.
certainly had our fair share of some unique approaches and some unique stories. I will say that I'm not a huge supporter of really gimmicky types of approaches. However, we have seen some things that worked. I remember one particular individual who wanted to work for an agency in New York City and was visiting that area, and basically made a lunch delivery to the contact person they were trying to reach out to at their office, which was a hot dog with their resume tucked into the side of the little container. And, I think especially in very creative types of careers and professions, I think that can work. And I think this person was able to talk to that manager at a point. I don't believe that he got hired, if I recall, but I think he connection. I had a student who also had written to a potential employer and wrote something to the effect of, I have a feeling you're looking for the best marketing graduate in the Midwest, and guess what? It's your lucky day. You just found him. And again, I didn't love that approach, but I can tell you that he got a call and was flown to the job site and received an offer. And he still talks about how I wasn't sure that was really a very good approach, being too direct. But I think we saw the case of the person who made themselves into a Lego and a Lego character and then took a YouTube video of themselves and sent that to a hiring manager, which was very unique. And that person got an internship offer. So, I think unique approaches, maybe with media, with video, for those creative types of environments can be appropriate. I mean, we're not seeing a lot of that in accounting and some of our other disciplines, but
Okay, that's quite a few creative stories there. I can just imagine going, um, or with the guy with the hot dog going, "Woo, the ketchup covered up the typo."
Yeah.
And you brought up a YouTube video with the Lego person, and I can see where that only works in creative. But do you see YouTube as being viable? Someone doing, a green screen and giving a professional like presentation and everything. Does that work, or was that something that has gone and came and
Uh,
passed already?
there was a trend towards that, and really that was just a couple of years ago in terms of putting forth your video credentials. I think that what happened on that was that many of your hiring managers, and especially those people in human resources, could see how that is fraught with potential discrimination. So I don't think the companies have embraced it enough for candidates to really spend a lot of time on it. Now, we do often talk about a person's online presence, whether it's their web page and they have some type of a portfolio within that web page. And I think some of those approaches can be really good. But that's also giving you more opportunity to make mistakes. So it has to be very clean, highly professional. I had somebody who wanted me to look at his web page, and when I opened it up, there was a picture of him playing a guitar in like a robe or something, and that was very awkward for me. So you have to make sure that every single part of that web presence is really very clean and professional.
Okay, and here's one thing that I'm interested in now that you brought up the web presence, having the website and everything. Does it matter to employers whether you go with the free site that has .wordpress.com or to have a paid for domain of
I do
yourname.com? Does
not
that
believe
make a
that it
difference at
does,
all?
and I am a complete supporter of the free sources. But again, people have to be careful because people can access this information. You have to think about what you're putting forth. There, are you opening yourself up to some type of identity theft? Sometimes people forget about letting lots of information about themselves out on the web and how that could potentially be used by somebody.
Okay. And since we're already diving into this, what are some of the best social media platforms? We already talked about LinkedIn, and we can dive into that a little bit more. But do you see a place in the job search for the other platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus?
Um, I do see opportunity with Twitter, and I think that's primarily from a promotional perspective for companies to promote their opportunities, for students to be following certain firms, and for them to, again, post positions or notices that then link to their web portal. Or I see a lot of opportunity with Twitter for promotion of opportunities. Facebook, I think we've pretty much well defined Facebook now in terms of how it varies from LinkedIn. And I think that folks are primarily using Facebook as their personal social media platform. I'm not seeing a lot of companies doing a lot with Facebook, although they do like to announce events and places where you can engage with them, they may announce there. And we still do use it to some extent, but as far as a place where you're going to find specific job opportunities and network with people in your field, I don't see that as much. Now, you may get referrals from, people that are in your personal network for positions and jobs, but I think that's kind of the still to that personal side, and then you're going to go engage with a company someplace else. Google, I think the jury's still out on that one. So we haven't seen a lot of students adopting that yet, but it's probably just a matter of time.
Okay. And yeah, Google Plus, it's one of those you want to love it, but not enough people after spending all these years on Facebook willing to make
Conversions,
the
yeah.
switch there.
But I think the
Yeah.
next, the
And
next thing is right around the corner, though, because we've been pretty static with these set of technologies, for a couple of years now. So the next greatest thing I think is probably right there.
okay. And even with Facebook, and I've been kind of debating back and forth on this, taking out a Facebook page as a distribution, as a way of distribution, just like Twitter, of your professional writing and knowledge. Is that valuable activity, or is that just more wasting your time in doing that
Yeah, we
as
haven't
well?
seen a lot of students and alums doing that or using that technique, so I don't have any direct feedback on that method.
Okay, and I have something that you might be able to look into, see if it's valuable for your students. I came across it. Um,
Hmm.
HootSuite. Uh, what I like about that is not only can you connect and schedule posts there, but you can actually filter your stream and to be able to single out the companies that post hashtag jobs or whatever, so you can get that information faster. Or in the case of LinkedIn, you can pretty much do a complete search for job openings. So I'm not sure if everybody was aware of
Yeah,
that, and just wanted to
I
let that
appreciate that.
be
We
known
need to
as a
look at it
resource.
more from that job seeker standpoint. Our recruiters use it, heavily as ways to, use multiple methods of getting opportunities out there. So how our students can better connect with it is an opportunity for us.
Yeah, and I know it's free for to connect to one of each account, and so I just thought, students being able to see just a stream on all the different platforms
Yep.
of job postings
Seem to have
is a great resource.
advantages. Yep.
It's amazing what they put out there. And so, what do you see right now as the current state of the job market for recent grads? We hear a lot about how the job market's recovering and everything. And so I want to see, with recent grads competing in the job market with people who have been out for a while, what opportunities have been developing, or what do you see as the
Sure.
current state?
Well, given the data that we work with and the measures that we use in terms of comparing and contrasting recruiting years to each other, this is a very, very good recruiting year. The companies are extremely active and posting heavy amounts of opportunity, as well as engaging on campus, coming in, meeting with students, doing all those kinds of things that are, again, some of our measures. Now, something that I would say about the market, though, is that most of the opportunity, or much of the opportunity, requires fairly sophisticated technical skills. And this is where we sometimes see, somewhat of a gap, because you'll hear people talk about, we need to create more job opportunities and create more jobs. But I would suggest, based on what we see, that it's really not about more job creation, but more about training individuals to be able to do the technical work that the current opportunities out there require. Because you'll still hear, and this is a conversation I had at 8:30 a.m. this morning, about a company trying to identify technical talent and having a lot of difficulty doing that. So I think that's really the message that we have seen and gotten, that the positions that are available are fairly high order. They require, again, fairly strong skills.
Okay, well, I'm glad that the job market is recovering. I know when I graduated in December of 2009, it wasn't.
Your timing was impeccable, Jacob.
Yeah, I believe I took on an extra semester just to
Let it
delayed
pick up a little
time.
bit out there. Yeah, '08 and '09 were our last really, recessionary years that were difficult in job seeking. It's absolutely true.
Yeah, and uh, wasn't too happy looking at my prospects back then.
It was
And
an interesting time.
yes, and so one of the mistakes that I made uh, back then in trying to do a job search and try and land a job is, you know, at least I thought I was doing well. I'd be working on it about 40 hours a week. I was on my computer, logged on to Career Builder and Monster and everything. However, I realized that that probably wasn't the best use of my time. So, what do you see in today? The usefulness of job boards, and are job boards, you know, even worth utilizing when applying to jobs, or are they more of a research and reconnaissance of the positions you want and what
Sure.
is needed to
Yeah,
qualify?
that's certainly a very good question. I would say to you that one of the most important things for job seekers to do is to assess the very specific results that they are getting from the various tools that they're using. So, if you're using something in particular and it is not garnering results, well, let's stop using that one, right? But I have some tools that people are getting 1 or 2% return rate and continuing to use that tool. Well, for me in my time, I'm looking, for more 15 to 20% return rates. So I want to find tools where I'm getting calls back after the actions that I take by using that method. Now, I think students do still have to apply to job postings on job boards, but that should only be about a third of the time that you spend. The other third is trying to find good companies that can make something happen for you. And then the other third is trying to find good people, which we've already talked about, that work in your field that can make something happen for you. So you're kind of mixing all those methods up. But I can tell you, if you sit down and apply to 100 jobs on one job board, I think the results might be disappointing. So,
Okay, and so now I got to ask you this since you brought this up. You said, the methods that give you that 20% return. So let me ask you this. What is the secret method that gives you the 20% return?
well, it's using good methods that work for you and good tools that work for you, and that can be different depending on what individuals need in terms of location and type of position and things like that. Um,
So you're saying that there's no one magic tool that everyone can
correct,
use and just
correct.
20%.
However, the other part of it too is making sure that you're tailoring your communications, because I do have students that are trying to approach opportunities in just somewhat of a generic way. And we are talking now about tailored resumes, tailored cover letters. I was recently involved in a search where we had 60 applicants for a position, and literally only 20 of them, 1/3 of them, said anything in their cover letter that related at all to what we'd asked for in the job description. And cover letters haven't died. You might find that to be unfortunate. But the
Well,
companies
I
are still looking for very tailored communication to the particular role and the skills and the experiences that they have asked for in that description. And I think some candidates are not relating well to the position.
okay, and I've heard a lot of back and forth on cover letters. Some saying employers don't, look at them, waste of time. Others say they're very useful. And then I finally heard one, and I want to get your opinion on this. That, they're still good. The only problem is they're so poorly written that they're just as good as being useless.
I would put it also in that category of another opportunity for you to make mistakes. So, it does have to be done very well. I can tell you that I just looked at 109 cover letters, and really probably 20% were really quality, well-written documents that could convince me to consider that person for an interview. We still, wonder because nobody wants to read anymore, right? So we keep wondering if and when cover letters are going to die. But I had an alum who called me, and this was probably a year ago, but he said he was asking me about how to handle getting an offer but still waiting back from another company and wanting to hear, et cetera. And I said something to the effect of, well, I'm glad your search is going so well. And he said, well, it wasn't going well until I started writing some halfway decent cover letters. And I really do think it can be a door opener if well done. But yes, you do have the opportunity to hurt yourself there too.
Okay, and then this is where I want to talk about the cover letter and resume. Because what I think part of the problem is that the cover letter just reiterates the resume
Right,
a lot, so it almost becomes pointless to read it.
right.
So when you are putting together a cover letter with your resume, then on the resume, how much detail do you want? Do you just want the resume to just be a slight, highlights just enough to pique their interest, and then the cover letter provide the bulk of the detail, or how do you want to go about that?
Yeah, I like to, in my resume, focus on outcomes and results. I'm not going to really do as much with job duties or responsibilities, but more again, what my significant outcomes have been while I've been in that role. So then in the cover letter, I think what you're trying to do is take a couple of examples. So they have asked for, strong analytical skills. Well, I want to use an example of a time where I've recently used analytical skills to be able to solve some problem or address some task, right? So what I try to do in the cover letter then again is connect to my outcomes and measures that I have on my resume with examples. Does that make sense?
Yes, if I understand you correctly, on the resume side, you don't want to try and fill up every last space on there. You just want to have it nice, neat, provide the outcomes and achievements that
Correct.
you've had in the positions, and then the cover letter tells the story of one or two, maybe three, to tell the story that relates to the job posting,
Exactly.
but you don't want to put too much information in there because you want to limit the amount of opportunities you have to shoot yourself in the foot.
Sure. And you want to still have, things that you can talk about in the interview situation. But I like to, again, lift up a couple of examples that demonstrate how I achieved those results that I have described in my resume.
Okay. And one last thing on the resume, objective statements. Maybe this has gone away. Maybe it's still being taught. I know, from high school on, it's always talked about the objective statement of, I want a position that, allows me to use my creativities and demonstrated skills to add value. Something vague that's almost worthless. So maybe I was just doing them wrong, and maybe I didn't have uh, professionals that really knew what they were talking about. But and I didn't get this information from you at Iowa State. I'm talking about high school even. And so I'm wanting to get your opinion on the objective statements. Are they still valuable, or have in my situation, I'm just writing them wrong?
Yeah. I definitely think that we're seeing a trend toward something a little bit different than an objective statement. And certainly for more experienced candidates such as yourself, it is much more common now to see either a professional summary or a skills summary. And I'm starting to lean that way really for undergrads as well. So stating more about what it is that you bring to the table and less about what it is that you're seeking. You know what I mean? Now, I do want students to be able to state succinctly what it is that they're seeking. So I'm afraid that sometimes they avoid the objective statement because they don't know what they're looking for. So they want someone to tell them what they're looking for, and that's not a great approach in job seeking. So it sort of depends on the reason for why we're not using something like that. Now, if you have absolutely no experience whatsoever, I mean, what are you going to write as a professional summary? What are you going to write as a skills summary? And then, an objective might be more appropriate. But I think for those, maybe graduating seniors and certainly those people who've worked professionally, we're leaning more towards those other types of statements.
Okay, and to go along with that, one of the best things I've heard regarding objective statements came from the author John Acuff.
Mm-hmm.
In his book Start, where he pointed out that companies don't hire you to care about what you want to do.
Exactly.
They want to know what you've done and if you can fill their need.
Exactly. That's why I think those types of statements are a better approach. I completely agree.
That concludes this week's episode. Join us next week as we finish up our interview with Kathy Whelan and further get more information that you need to take your job search to the next level. So don't forget to subscribe because you don't want to miss an episode. Until next week, take your career search to the next level.